Thomas Alva Edison was an American inventor and businessman who became one of the most influential figures in modern history. Thomas Edison, inventor, entrepreneur, and industrial pioneer, was born in Milan, Ohio on February 11, 1847. He came from a middle-class family. He had a distinctive appearance with his penetrating eyes and determined expression. Edison's early years were marked by curiosity and restlessness. He received little formal education, attending school for only a few months before his mother withdrew him to teach him at home. His teachers had considered him difficult and inattentive, but his mother recognized his intelligence and nurtured his natural inquisitiveness. This unconventional education shaped his approach to learning and innovation, though his later career would test those foundations in ways no one could have predicted. Edison's childhood was spent in Port Huron, Michigan, where his family had moved when he was 7 years old. He was an voracious reader, consuming books on science, history, and technology. At age 12, he began working as a newspaper boy on the Grand Trunk Railroad, selling papers and candy to passengers. It was during this time that Edison began conducting chemical experiments in a baggage car that the railroad had allowed him to use as a laboratory. The makeshift laboratory came to an abrupt end when a chemical fire broke out, and Edison was thrown off the train along with his equipment. In his teenage years, Edison learned telegraphy, a skill that would prove crucial to his future career. According to legend, he learned the trade after saving a station agent's child from being struck by a train, and the grateful father taught him telegraphy in return. Whether the story is entirely true or embellished, Edison did become a skilled telegraph operator. He worked as an itinerant telegrapher, moving from city to city, taking jobs in various telegraph offices across the Midwest and South. During these years, he began tinkering with telegraph equipment, making improvements and modifications. By 1868, Edison had moved to Boston where he worked as a telegrapher and began his career as an inventor in earnest. He received his first patent in 1869 for an electric vote recorder designed to speed up voting in legislative bodies. The device was technically sound and worked as intended. However, despite the technical merits of his design, politicians showed no interest in the invention. They preferred the traditional slow voting process, which allowed time for persuasion and deal-making. The rejection taught Edison a valuable lesson: he would never again invent something unless he was certain there was commercial demand for it. Edison moved to New York City in 1869, arriving with almost no money. He found work with the Gold Indicator Company, and then with the Law's Gold Reporting Service, where he made improvements to their stock ticker machines. His innovations caught the attention of company executives. When Edison sold his improved stock ticker and other inventions to the Gold and Stock Telegraph Company, he expected a payment of perhaps $5,000. Instead, he was offered $40,000, an enormous sum at the time. The windfall provided Edison with the capital he needed to establish himself as a full-time inventor and manufacturer. With his newfound wealth, Edison established a manufacturing shop in Newark, New Jersey, in 1870. He hired skilled machinists and began producing stock tickers and other telegraph equipment while continuing to develop new inventions. During this period, Edison was extraordinarily productive, receiving dozens of patents and building a successful business. He also married Mary Stilwell in 1871, a young woman who had worked in one of his shops. They would have 3 children together, though Edison's obsessive focus on his work meant he was often an absent husband and father. In 1876, Edison moved his operations to Menlo Park, New Jersey, where he established what would become the world's first industrial research laboratory. Unlike individual inventors working alone, Edison created a team approach to invention. He employed skilled machinists, scientists, and craftsmen who worked under his direction to develop and refine new technologies. This innovation factory, as it came to be known, would produce some of the most important inventions of the 19th century. Edison's genius lay not just in his own inventive abilities but in his capacity to organize and direct the talents of others toward practical goals. The first major success from Menlo Park came in 1877 with the invention of the phonograph. Edison had been working on improvements to the telegraph and telephone when he discovered that sound vibrations could be recorded as indentations on a rotating cylinder covered with tinfoil. When the cylinder was rotated again with a needle following the indentations, the sound was reproduced. The first words Edison recorded were "Mary had a little lamb." The phonograph caused a sensation. Edison was hailed as the Wizard of Menlo Park and became a celebrity. Newspapers and magazines featured stories about him and his magical laboratory. Following the success of the phonograph, Edison turned his attention to electric lighting. Gas lighting was the standard for homes and businesses, but it was dangerous, dirty, and inefficient. Several inventors had experimented with electric arc lighting, which was too bright and harsh for indoor use. Edison believed he could create a practical incandescent light that would be suitable for homes and offices. He announced his intention to develop such a system in 1878, and his reputation was such that investors immediately provided funding. The development of a practical incandescent light bulb proved far more difficult than Edison had anticipated. The challenge was finding a filament material that would glow brightly when electricity passed through it but would not burn out quickly. Edison and his team tested thousands of different materials, from platinum to various plant fibers. The work was tedious and frustrating. Filaments would burn brightly for a few minutes or hours, then fail. Each failure required analysis and adjustment before the next experiment could begin. In October 1879, after more than a year of intensive experimentation, Edison's team successfully tested a carbonized cotton thread filament that burned for over 13 hours. Further refinements using carbonized bamboo produced bulbs that lasted over 1,200 hours. Edison had created a practical incandescent light bulb. However, the bulb alone was not enough. Edison understood that a complete electrical system was needed, including generators, wiring, switches, and meters. He set about developing every component necessary for a practical lighting system. On September 4, 1882, Edison opened the Pearl Street Generating Station in Lower Manhattan, the world's first commercial electric power station. The station provided electricity to light bulbs in homes and businesses in a 1 square mile area. It was a triumph of engineering and business planning. Edison had not just invented a light bulb, he had created an entire industry. The success of Pearl Street led to the establishment of Edison Electric companies across America and around the world. During the 1880s, Edison's business empire expanded rapidly. He established manufacturing facilities to produce light bulbs, generators, and electrical equipment. He became wealthy and famous, one of the most celebrated figures in America. However, success brought new challenges and competitors. The electrical industry became a battleground between Edison's direct current system and the alternating current system promoted by George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla. Edison was convinced that direct current was safer and more practical than alternating current. He launched a public relations campaign against AC power, demonstrating its dangers by publicly electrocuting animals. He even secretly funded the development of the electric chair, which used AC current, hoping to associate alternating current with death in the public mind. These tactics, which became known as the War of Currents, were among the most controversial actions of Edison's career. Despite his efforts, alternating current proved superior for long-distance power transmission, and Edison's DC system was eventually abandoned for most applications. In 1884, Edison's wife Mary died at age 29, possibly from a brain tumor, though the exact cause was never determined. Edison was devastated by the loss, though he threw himself into his work as he always did in times of personal crisis. 2 years later, he married Mina Miller, the daughter of an Ohio industrialist. Mina was educated, cultured, and better equipped than Mary had been to manage Edison's household and social obligations. They would have 3 children together, and the marriage was more successful than his first. In 1887, Edison built a new and much larger laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey. The facility was 10 times larger than Menlo Park and included machine shops, chemical laboratories, and a library. Edison intended it to be the most advanced research facility in the world, capable of working on any type of invention. Over the next 4 decades, the West Orange Laboratory would produce innovations in numerous fields, from storage batteries to motion pictures to cement manufacturing. One of Edison's most important projects in the 1890s was the development of motion picture technology. Working with his assistant William Kennedy Laurie Dixon, Edison developed the kinetograph, a motion picture camera, and the kinetoscope, a device for viewing films. The kinetoscope was a cabinet with a peephole through which individual viewers could watch short films. Edison opened kinetoscope parlors where customers paid to view brief films of vaudeville acts, boxing matches, and other entertainments. While Edison did not invent motion pictures, his contributions to the technology and his business model for distributing films were crucial to the development of the movie industry. However, Edison's involvement with motion pictures also revealed his limitations as a businessman. He was slow to recognize the potential of projecting films for large audiences, allowing competitors to develop that market. He also engaged in aggressive patent litigation, attempting to control the entire motion picture industry through his patents. These legal battles consumed enormous amounts of time and money while creating resentment among other filmmakers. Eventually, independent producers moved to California, partly to escape Edison's patent enforcement, establishing Hollywood as the center of American film production. In the early 20th century, Edison became interested in developing a practical storage battery for electric vehicles. He believed that gasoline-powered automobiles were a temporary phenomenon and that electric vehicles would eventually dominate. He spent over a decade and millions of dollars developing an alkaline storage battery that was more durable and reliable than existing lead-acid batteries. The Edison battery was a technical success and found applications in industrial equipment, railroad signals, and submarines. However, improvements in gasoline engines and the development of the electric starter made gasoline automobiles more practical, and electric vehicles faded from the market. Edison's battery business never achieved the success he had hoped for. During World War I, Edison served as chairman of the Naval Consulting Board, advising the Navy on technology and weapons. He was 70 years old when America entered the war, but he threw himself into the work with characteristic energy. He conducted experiments on submarine detection, ship camouflage, and various weapons systems. While many of his proposals were not adopted, his service demonstrated his continued commitment to practical problem-solving and his patriotic devotion to his country. Edison's later years were marked by continued work and public recognition. He remained active in his laboratory well into his 80s, though his hearing, which had been poor since his youth, had deteriorated to near total deafness. He continued to work on various projects, from rubber production to improvements in cement manufacturing. He was celebrated as America's greatest inventor, receiving honors and awards from around the world. In 1928, Congress awarded him a special Congressional Gold Medal for his contributions to civilization. Edison's approach to invention was methodical and persistent rather than inspired. His famous quote, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration," reflected his belief that success came from hard work and systematic experimentation rather than sudden flashes of insight. He was known for working extremely long hours, sometimes sleeping only a few hours a night, taking short naps in his laboratory when exhausted. He drove his employees hard but paid them well and inspired loyalty through his own example of tireless effort. Throughout his career, Edison accumulated 1,093 patents, a record that stood for decades. These patents covered an extraordinary range of technologies, from electrical systems to sound recording to motion pictures to cement manufacturing. Not all of his inventions were successful, and some of his business ventures failed. He lost money on iron ore mining operations and his cement business struggled for years before becoming profitable. However, his successes far outweighed his failures, and his impact on modern life was immeasurable. Edison's legacy extends beyond his individual inventions. He pioneered the concept of industrial research, creating the model for corporate research and development laboratories that became standard in the 20th century. He demonstrated that innovation could be systematized and that teams of researchers working together could produce results faster than individual inventors. He also understood the importance of integrating invention with manufacturing and marketing, creating complete systems rather than just isolated devices. However, Edison's reputation has been complicated by controversies and criticisms. He was accused of taking credit for the work of his employees, particularly in the case of the motion picture camera, which was largely developed by William Dixon. His vicious campaign against alternating current damaged his reputation and demonstrated a willingness to use questionable tactics against competitors. He was also criticized for being a ruthless businessman who used patent litigation to crush competitors and control markets. Modern historians have also questioned some of the myths surrounding Edison. The story of his conducting 10,000 experiments to develop the light bulb, for instance, appears to be exaggerated. His famous quote about not failing but finding 10,000 ways that didn't work may be apocryphal. Nevertheless, even with these qualifications, Edison's achievements remain extraordinary. He transformed multiple industries and his inventions fundamentally changed how people lived and worked. In his final years, Edison's health began to decline. He suffered from various ailments, including diabetes and kidney problems. However, he continued working almost until the end, spending time in his laboratory and working on experiments. On October 14, 1931, Edison lapsed into a coma. He died 4 days later, on October 18, 1931, at his home in West Orange, New Jersey. He was 84 years old. Edison's death was marked by an unprecedented outpouring of public grief. President Herbert Hoover suggested that Americans dim their lights for 1 minute in honor of the inventor, though this proved impractical given how dependent the nation had become on electric lighting. His funeral was attended by dignitaries from around the world. He was buried in Rosedale Cemetery in Orange, New Jersey, behind his laboratory and home. In death, as in life, Edison was remembered as the embodiment of American ingenuity and entrepreneurship. His legacy is complex and multifaceted. He was a brilliant inventor who created technologies that transformed civilization. He was also a shrewd businessman who built industrial empires and accumulated great wealth. He was a tireless worker who inspired others through his example. He was also a demanding employer who could be difficult and ruthless in pursuit of his goals. Modern assessments of Edison recognize both his genius and his limitations. He was not a theoretical scientist and made few contributions to pure science. His approach was empirical and practical, focused on creating useful devices rather than understanding underlying principles. He was sometimes wrong in his technical judgments, as his stubborn advocacy for direct current demonstrated. He was not always generous in acknowledging the contributions of his collaborators and employees. Yet even with these qualifications, Edison's place in history is secure. His inventions touched nearly every aspect of modern life. Electric lighting, sound recording, motion pictures, and storage batteries all bear his mark. More importantly, he demonstrated that innovation could be organized and directed toward practical ends. He showed that invention was not just a matter of individual genius but could be a systematic process involving teams of skilled workers. Perhaps the most fitting assessment of Thomas Edison is that he was the right person at the right time. He lived during a period of rapid technological change and industrial expansion, and he possessed the skills and temperament to thrive in that environment. He was practical rather than theoretical, focused on commercial applications rather than pure research. He was persistent and willing to work harder than anyone else. He understood that invention alone was not enough. Successful innovation required manufacturing capability, marketing skill, and business acumen. Edison represents a particular type of American hero, the self-made man who rises through intelligence and hard work to transform the world. His story embodied the American dream of success through individual effort. Unlike many inventors who died poor and forgotten, Edison achieved wealth and fame during his lifetime. He was celebrated as a national treasure and his name became synonymous with innovation itself. In the end, Thomas Edison was neither a perfect genius nor simply a skilled tinkerer, but rather an extraordinary figure who combined inventive ability with business skill and tireless work ethic. His legacy includes not just his individual inventions but his demonstration that innovation could be organized and systematized. He is remembered today as one of the greatest inventors in history, a man whose work fundamentally shaped the modern world. Edison remains a symbol of American innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, his name forever associated with the electric light that banished darkness and illuminated the path to the modern age.